today, Dr. Doug's All Things Animal radio show. I'm Dr. Pernikoff, Doug Pernikoff of the Clarkson Wilson Veterinary Clinic, and I have with me an amazing person, Cindy Vickers, who's our trainer and co-host. So you want to say hi?
Well, I did, and then I froze. I didn't know if I should say hi or what to do. So
was I too nice?
I don't know.
Maybe? Okay.
In a moment.
Today, we don't have any special guests. We're just going to entertain one another, and we have a really couple of interesting topics. The first one we're going to focus on is defined as traveling with your pets. And we figure we're in the middle of spring break, and it extends in some schools all the way into April. So this would be a good opportunity to discuss some of the issues about traveling. And, you know, in general, we look at typically car or plane travel. There are other ways to go, I guess, but these would be the two most common. And they share a lot of common needs as regard traveling with your pets. But we thought we'd kind of break them out and maybe first talk about air travel and what that means. And I'm going to let Cindy start.
Well, you know, I don't know how I'm going to do today because I'm still stuck on that we're just here to entertain each other. And then the next thing I hear is air travel and what that means. It means you travel in the air on an airplane.
Oh, God, I've been waiting for an explanation. So let's assume I want to take my dog on the plane. Mm-hmm. I mean, what are the obvious issues that you would suggest?
Well, will they be allowed on the plane?
Okay, so
is there a size requirement? Will my animal die if they put it in cargo?
I don't think size matters really, but I think what you can do is ask the airlines.
Oh, but it does. And by the way, yes, the dog. You know that you can bring your dog on the. Well, you're going to check with the airline because different airlines can have different requirements.
Exactly.
But the dog has to be in a carrier and fit underneath the seat in front of you.
Right.
That's
typically
a little dog.
Right. I have read that, and I have read that some airlines might, depending on the dog size and disposition and manner, might be able to sit on your lap. And I don't know how true that is. I've never seen it. But the point is that the dog or a cat has to be really well managed because no one's going to tolerate, if the dog's moving around or stuff like that. And if not, they may have to go in a crate, and the crate may have to be held in the typical luggage storage. And then there's a whole different group of criteria and issues to think about when you do that, too.
Well, there's a lot. Like we said, if they are brachiocephalic, so they call them snub-nosed dogs, they're generally not even allowed because they're concerned. I don't know why that's a concern. They feel like the air pressure won't allow them to breathe
That might
freely.
be it. Yeah, I haven't heard that myself, but that would make sense. There are anatomical issues that would make them more concerned, and nobody wants the liability. I wonder if they have insurance, whether the owner has to buy insurance when they put them on the plane, or whether there's some insurance coverage that the plane offers. I've never heard.
Wow, and we're supposed to be providing that. We're sorry, because we don't really know about the insurance part, but we have other things that we can say.
That we do know.
We do.
So when you put, for instance, if you're going to use a crate, you definitely want to get the crate sized appropriately for the dog. You want to make sure that you have some kind of covering in there, possibly a blanket, a familiar blanket, or a pillow, something that smells familiar so that they are going to be more comfortable. I'm thinking you might have a feeding. Maybe I've heard you should feed like maybe 3 hours before and only a limited amount of food. And also some people can provide those portable water units. They kind of collapse down, and then right before you put them into the plane, you can fill them up with water and have that in the crate.
Well, and generally speaking, the max weight is 100 pounds.
Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And I do have the requirements for the crate size,
Ooh.
And there's special crates for airlines. It's not just any old crate, but it can be 36 in length, 26 in width, and 28 inches high.
Those are your measurements, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So yes, they are. As a matter of fact, so I fit very neatly into that crate.
You fit in the crate very well.
I've had to travel that way a few times.
Now, I was going to ask you also, do you have to have any other particular guidelines for these guys in the back? Veterinary, I assume we're going to have a veterinary. This is really bad.
You have to have a health certificate. You know this. You have to have a health certificate. So I would say, first and foremost, if you're going to travel with or attempt to travel with your pet on an airline, you don't want to make this decision last minute. I mean, you need to make arrangements. You'll have to get a health certificate from your vet. They will have to have a rabies shot. They can't fly in cargo if they're below 45 pounds. So if your animal doesn't fit under the seat in front of you, they would have to go cargo, and you can only fly certain times of the year, and you'd really have to check with the airline because it's temperature driven.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Because I know that some airlines will tell me that 48 degrees is kind of the limit, and you have to get permission from a veterinarian if it's going to have to be below that. And that would depend, of course, on the type of dog, the fur coat design, and stuff like that, whether it could go a little bit cooler. And I think that I've never had to do that. Have you ever had to actually transport a dog?
I have picked dogs up from the airport. And yes, actually, I guess the answer is yes, because I sent the dog back. It just bothered me. I mean, I was not happy about it. I mean, it was fine. The dog was fine, and but I just felt worried. You know, I knew that many years ago a prize-winning Commodore came off an airline dead, and so that was a big thing. And I think that might have been sort of the stimulus that started so many more restrictions, because I'm sure the airlines were just horrified, and because it's freezing under the plane.
Right.
So
it is, yeah.
it's not the same. I'd have to have a big reason to fly my dog.
Well, they're actually special transports that actually do that. They're like smaller planes. They're commercial, and they actually don't have a formal separation between, they put them into their space behind the pilot without seats.
Yeah.
And that could be a neat thing to do. Of course, it's be a lot more expensive.
Probably. I would feel better about that. But that also, I think, has got the max weight of 100 pounds. And most dogs are under 100 pounds. But
yeah, that's true.
But there are some that aren't.
You're not supposed to put them, I know. They won't allow you to put if it's in the front cabin area, no emergency exit rows, because that obviously wouldn't make any sense. And again, service dogs you mentioned earlier, but service dogs, I understand, have to be placed on the plane, and whatever that description or definition is for a service dog.
They're with a person.
They're just with a person?
Yeah, they're with whoever they're the service dog to. I mean, they're with that person, and by law, they are allowed to go anywhere.
Again, I guess that's a pre-approval kind of situation?
It's not supposed to be, but I think
Smart
I have
too.
Yes, and there isn't. There is no legal documentation that you have to have that says you are certified as a service dog. If there, in fact, somebody is telling you that they can give you this documentation, that is a bogus organization. It doesn't exist. But I have worked with people who have traveled, and I suggested they get a note from their doctor on their letterhead that says this dog, it works as a service animal. I mean, it could be a psychiatrist, a psychologist, it could be their veterinarian. Even from a trainer, it wouldn't hurt, but it's not going to have the kind of punch that if your doctor says that this is your service animal. But that is just to save you aggravation.
Well, I've heard that even dogs that might be servicing people that have a seizure disorder, they can actually pick up a seizure before it's about to happen, which helps both the person and the people that are managing the flight.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
Another thing is, if you're going to have a service dog, you would just be well served to invest in a harness that says, I'm a service dog, or therapy dog, or a hearing dog, or just that they're a service dog, and then it just looks legit.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And have the dog very well groomed. That's another thing. It looks dicey, and it's not very pleasant to travel with, a dog or a cat that's not very well groomed.
Well, yeah, you don't want to be sitting next to a stinky dog or cat. That
You do
wouldn't
not.
be fun.
You do not. And the flight can't be longer than 12 hours.
Ah.
That includes going through customs.
So I should mention that even going internationally, they probably have stopovers, I guess, but you have to get your health certificate has to be different. You have to have one that's called an embarkation health certificate. In other words, from your point of leaving, whatever that, if it's New York, Hawaii, wherever it is, has to have a special certificate. And then you also need to make sure that wherever you're flying to is allowing your dog in or cat. And so you need often if it's a foreign foreign country, they're going to require some kind of specific permit. And now most of the U.S. states, even if you're traveling by car, you're theoretically supposed to have a health certificate, and you're supposed to have a permit as you enter a particular state for any length of time. So that stuff, most of the time, those aren't going to be policed very well, but it's a law by nature. So I think we should be careful about that.
Just maybe, but we haven't talked about birds at all. Birds is a whole different ball of wax.
Well, most of the time you're going to have those birds in the cabin space because they're small. But if they get noisy, or if they tend to be noisy, then you're probably going to end up in the back area. But I did want to talk a little bit about, while we have some time, about how different is this when we're preparing for car travel. So, for instance, are we going to have all the same issues we have with air? In some cases, they're the same. Like, one thing we always talk about, we didn't mention just a moment ago, but we want to make sure if we're going to be traveling, we have a lot of homework to do, just like you mentioned earlier. We got to find out our path. We need to know along the way if we're going to have pet-friendly hotels that we can stop at. We want to keep our animals microchipped or tattooed or some other identification for, God forbid, if you make a stop someplace and they get away from you. That would be a real problem. Anything else?
We'll definitely have a collar with their tags on. You really want them to have a rabies tag on, just in case anything would happen or you'd be accused of something happening. You don't want anybody to have to go through a situation with rabies. But the first thing is, even before you have to be taken someplace to have a microchip read, somebody can look at the collar and say, oh, this is Maisie, and here's her number, and they can call you.
That's true.
So having said that, you need to have a leash with you.
Right.
So if you get out of that car, you have a collar and a leash. And here's a big one. I bet you didn't think about this. Because people travel in the summer a lot. So you don't want to leave your dog in the car.
Oh, I did think about that.
And what if you have to get out and go to the bathroom?
Right. In fact, people don't realize how sensitive animals are to hot weather, but even 10 minutes in a 70-degree weather situation in a car with the windows even partly down can be life-threatening.
Wow, 70 degrees?
70 degrees with the windows essentially all the way up, but with a crack, and that can kill a dog, a cat, or even a child. And this happens every summer. People just don't think about it, and somebody gets hurt or injured or worse.
Well, it's almost always a whole lot hotter than 70 degrees, too.
Well, it doesn't take long. That's the whole point. I think it's like a greenhouse effect. Once you close it up, unless you have the motor running, and then there's other issues with that.
So there are places actually that you can bring the dog in the bathroom.
Oh, are there?
And once again, we we have no information about that, but I think you can Google it about traveling with your pet and simply just put in,
toilet needs.
Well, bathroom stops that allow pets.
Well, another good point along that same line is I feel you should be stopping every 3 to 4 hours for a potty break for the pets. And again, as you said before, make sure they're identified and they have a good leash or collar or harness, whatever you need. Because if you're walking around, you're on the road at one of these rest stops or something, the animal gets away from you, that could be a terrible dilemma. Or worse yet, if you leave the car the pet in the car and you've got somebody that happens by and you're not right there, they might steal your pet, and that's not a good thing. And these things happen all the time. That's the worst part.
I think you need to think about bringing water in a bowl. I mean, probably most people do, but if it just doesn't occur to you and you have water, but you don't have something to put the water in so the dog can easily drink it, you have an issue with that.
Well, those collapsible bowls are great. And you talked about identification. I think people should put together a pet information packet that includes the veterinarian. Along the way, you might try and identify where there are veterinary clinics that you might need to stop for, an emergency clinic. Keep them out of the front seat. It's a lot safer. They should be contained in some way. So there are a lot of new devices or things you can buy that can help. Either you put them in a crate and you kind of constrain the crate with a seatbelt. That can be useful. But we want to make sure they're not flopping around, and God forbid if there's a rush stop, that could be dangerous.
And they have these things called bucket seats. They probably have other names, and it's this kind of a comfortable little pod that your dog can be in. It's easier than just putting a seatbelt on them. You have to look up how they go into your car, but it's just more much more comfortable way for them to ride.
Yeah, I've also heard that they have, and this is the fun part of going to the pet shop because you get to look at all these things and items and stuff. But I hear they also have some special travel litter trays for cats because people don't think about that. I think that's really important too because most people are inclined to let the cat sit around and move around, but that's really dangerous. God forbid they get under your feet and you're the driver. That could be really dangerous.
It's happened to me.
It's happened to you? Mm-hmm. Oh my God! Don't let your dogs keep their heads out the window. That can cause problems. Something can come by and really hurt them, and that's not something you want. As you said, carry the vaccine records along, particularly rabies vaccine, because as you go from state to state, that's going to be a problem. And one other thing I always like to tell people, wherever you take your pet, you're introducing that pet to a new environment. So you want to make sure you're not taking fleas or ticks to some new location. That's not fair. At the same time, you want to make sure your animal has all the protective mechanisms to avoid picking up those kind of issues at a new site.
How do you feel about, what do you think about Dramamine?
I think that drugs like Dramamine, which is for motion sickness, or Benadryl, there's one called Zilkine that your vets often happen. And in worst case scenarios, you can use acepromazine, which is a true sedative. I think any of those can be very, very useful. When we talk, maybe we'll get a chance to talk another time about some of the methods to kind of train your animals to travel.
Yeah, because if they start throwing up in the back seat, that's
not cool.
Bring cleaning supplies.
Well, thank you very much. I think it was a good topic. We're going to be back with some good questions from our listeners. This is Dr. Doug Pernikoff and Cindy Vickers of Dr. Doug's All Things Animal radio show. Well, welcome back, everyone. This is Dr. Doug Pernikoff and my lovely, lovely co-host, Cindy Vickers.
Two lovelies today.
Oh, my gosh. Well, you're looking good. But we're going to continue our discussion regarding traveling with our pets, and we have some visitors on the line. So we'll start with Jeff on line 1. Is this Jeff?
Yes.
Hey, hi, this is Dr. Pernikoff of Dr. Doug's All Things Animal radio show. Do you have a question that we can help you with?
Yes, sir, I do. My question is, my cat hyperventilates when I put it in the cage. So what's going to happen when I travel and put it in a crate on a plane?
It's going to faint.
I'd say don't put it in a crate if it hyperventilates when it's in a crate.
It's going to fall out. Okay, this is for you.
Oh, is that for me? Okay.
Sure.
So, that's not an unusual situation. So I think one of the best things you can do is kind of start training your cat to the crate. There are medications your veterinarian may be able to help you with that'll kind of quiet and sedate the cat a bit. But how long is the flight estimated?
About 2.5 hours.
Okay, so that's a pretty good time period. So what I would do is start early and kind of train the cat to the first traveling in the crate, in the car possibly, take some short trips, let him get used to it, and make life good. And then move to a longer period and see if he gets more and more comfortable with that. Okay? And then if that doesn't work, I'd also talk to your veterinarian about using some kind of sedative. I think that would be useful. Okay?
Okay.
Well, good luck with that.
Great.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, thanks. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. And now we have on our second line a young lady named Amy. Hello, Amy?
Yes.
Hi, this is Dr. Pernikoff of Dr. Doug's All Things Animal radio show. I'm here with my co-host, Cindy Vickers. Do you have a question we can help you with?
I sure do. I'm calling in because I just have a quick question. I'm flying to Arizona soon, and I have a Yorkie pup, and I would love to know what I can possibly do to keep her from barking, and being disruptive to the other passengers on the plane. So, when they see me coming on the plane with her, they don't want to jump right off.
So she has the tendency to be very loud and noisy. Is that typical?
She does. She's really kind of active and very high-strung.
So from a veterinarian's perspective, and then I'm going to have Cindy talk to you about what she might suggest as a trainer, I would suggest that you talk to your veterinarian, and we were mentioning this to the other caller, but with dogs, it's very easy to put together some combinations of sedatives or quieting agents. It might be anything as simple as Dramamine or Benadryl, or they have a drug called acepromazine. So there are a lot of choices for you. But I think along with that, Cindy may have some ideas about how to manage that from a training perspective.
Well, actually, I think this refers back to what we talked about earlier in the show. And a dog that is reactive and is a barker, maybe you already have a history of this. And I think that I would if I'm going to travel and I have to really be cognizant of not being a nuisance and not wanting airlines to sometimes say, no way, we're never having dogs again because we have so much trouble with them, I think I would be inclined to medicate them. I mean, certainly, absolutely with the under the supervision of your vet, but and the dog will just be probably much happier and calmer.
That would be great, because then I know everybody will be happy, including my puppy.
I think so.
That would be great.
Yeah, and just, I would just say that if you speak to your vet, you're not going to over-medicate your dog. You're probably not going to ace them, as we would say. Probably something just to keep them calm, and then they can just, sort of sleep through
Take the edge off of them.
Take the edge off.
Oh,
That's
that
what we
would
like
be
to say.
Fabulous.
Now, some dogs, and you might talk to the airlines, but some dogs, if they're small enough and they're contained, they might even allow you to have him on your lap as long as he's quiet. I was just reading about that
really?
today. Yeah. So, again, it's going to be Cindy and I were talking about airline travel before, and we decided that everybody has their own game, so you're going to have to do your due diligence and learn what you can from the airline in particular. Okay?
Oh, that's a great suggestion. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Safe travels.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, on line 3, it looks like we have Carla. Hello, Carla. This is Dr. Pernikoff. You there?
I am.
Hi. How can we help you?
Okay, so we're planning a camping trip with our dogs, and they seem to get really nervous in the car. So I was just seeing what we could do to help with that.
Well, again, we're getting a lot of the same kind of questions, but they're good questions. I think it's really important to, again, make sure they've got all their shots up to date and everything, because you're going to be out in the woods, tick protected and all that kind of good stuff. But most importantly is to get them used to and familiar with traveling in a car. So again, with dogs, I always tell people, sit in the car with the engine on, hopefully roll the windows down a little bit, and just let them hear nice soft music and let them be comfortable. And then start to go maybe 10-minute rides, 15-minute rides, doing the same thing, keeping it really comfortable and playful. Maybe you end up at a dog park so they know that the adventure is going to end up in a good space. And gradually, I believe that they'll get more comfortable. And then finally, again, as we mentioned earlier, there are a lot of medications that your veterinarian can offer that will help to keep them quieter, more comfortable, and take that edge off. Okay?
I'd like to say
That's
also,
great.
just also when you're trying to acclimate your dog to riding in a car, Dr. Doug is saying you're going to start out in these small baby steps, but I think that you need to think about how do you move to the next baby step. So if the first one is just sitting in the car, you really don't want to move forward until you see that your dog has adjusted or has become calm. So if they're just panting profusely or whining or frantic, hypersalivating.
I love that word.
Then don't move on. And so I'd also put my dog in the car for these first few times, the first 20 times if you have to, hungry, with some kind of really wonderful treat for 2 reasons. If they will not take the treat, they're still really, really scared. So that's a great way to know. And if they do, then they've just had something really fun happen as a result of being in the car, and then you let them out. And I also love what Doug said about at the first, a very short trips, and have them end up just coming home or going someplace like fun.
That's good. Hey, Cindy, I was just wondering, and was that answering your question, Carla?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that helps a lot.
Yeah, get to your veterinarian. He'll mention a number of different products that we've already talked about and some other ones that I may not have talked about, but I think that's always a good solution. Okay.
All right, well, thank you guys so much.
Thanks so
Thank
much,
you.
Carla.
Love your show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Cindy, we had some interesting calls. A lot of them had to do with similar problems. Have you seen anything else? Have you ever heard of people going on a train with a pet or any other modes of transportation?
Well, the only thing that I read was that I could not find anything that said that animals are allowed on a train. So I know you can bring them obviously in your car. They can fly in a variety of ways. But I could be wrong. I'm not saying that I am, call me and call us and tell us that I'm incorrect. But what I saw was that no animals on a train, service dogs would have to be, or service animals would have to be accepted because that's the law.
Oh, that's true. And I know there's a method to get your dog credited as a service animal, but that's something they can Google, I imagine.
And that is bogus also.
Is it really?
Yes, there is no certification for, boy, that's a topic for another show.
Okay.
Exactly, service animals and how should they be certified? Should they be certified? Who should do it?
Right. That's interesting. I really didn't know that.
I need to take a big breath there. It's like at this very long sentence. And it's like
but-
singing.
Well, I didn't hear any commas or periods.
And, well, that's why I almost ran out of breath. I'm going to remember that now. It's just going to pretend like I'm singing a song.
Well, let me ask you, a lot of people go boating at the Ozarks and stuff like that on the weekends. And what would you suggest for people that want to take their dogs on the boat?
I want to just say, well, what would you suggest? I would suggest having a life preserver for them,
right.
for sure. And and don't assume that your dog knows how to swim. So if it were me and it were my dog, I think that I'd want to see that my dog could swim. If they could not, and maybe they're a little dog that doesn't swim, I would have a life jacket on them, and I would be sure that I knew how to swim.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really being serious.
Do you know
yes,
how to swim?
I do know how to
Oh,
swim.
very
I've been
good.
swimming since forever.
Wow.
But I had a golden retriever once, and they are natural water dogs, and that dog did not know how to swim.
Seriously?
So case in point, if you do want to teach your dog to swim, it is infinitely easier to have them a place where there is a shore so they can walk into the water rather than try to get into a pool where there's no way to ease themselves into the water. It's much easier to teach them to swim that way.
That's an interesting idea. I used to take my dogs in kind of a slope into a creek or something, but where they could easily get back out. Because I saw one time when a dog got in the water, had a steep, muddy slope and couldn't get up. And this was also a dog that would swim normally and never wanted to go in the water again. Well, that's the end of this segment, Dr. Doug's All Things Animal radio show, and we're going to be right back with our next topic, which will be some special training techniques and questions that Cindy will direct
It's
for us.
Stump Cindy.
It's what?
I think you're trying to stump me.
No, I've only made really difficult questions, but I think you're going to do fine.
Oh, okay.
And we'll be right back, folks. Thanks for listening.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo, where are you? We got some work to do now.
Welcome back to our third segment. We're going to be discussing pet training issues. Now, we've talked about other aspects of pet training on another show, but I think this is going to be a little bit different. And it's just Cindy and I. And seeing that Cindy's had many, many, many years as a trainer, we're going to put her on the spot with a lot of interesting topic questions. Okay, are you ready for it?
I am ready.
Okay. If you get these wrong, you're out of the show.
Okay.
Ready?
Yes.
Well, how important is it to get a training certificate if you want to be a dog or cat trainer? And what are the kind of costs that someone might expect? And how do you differentiate one program from another?
Wow. Well, without necessarily recommending anybody, I think it would be the same as any school. There are good schools and ones that are not as good. So how am I doing
You were
so
looking
far?
for the right words, I think.
Yeah, I was, and I didn't have the vocabulary to support it. I do have some certifications, and I think they've been very helpful. So and I really did use what I had. So I think the thing that the certification tells you, which is sort of like going to college, that somebody at the very least made the effort. There was some information put in front of them that they were responsible for knowing. And I used to be a mentor for one of these organizations, and they did have a piece where they had to do their kind of, their hands-on training with a trainer and be in class and teach class and have the experience of how do I teach what I know about this animal to a person. So I actually do think that it's helpful. However, it is really... it's really just a great way to start. It gives you an idea of what you need, the beginnings of what you need to know. But there's so much information out there. There's so much online. There's so many seminars that you really have to get involved, and you really have to
Stay on top of it, I guess.
You do. And learning it and teaching it to somebody are two completely different skills.
That's true. I think that's good. So they have like continuing education opportunities, and do you have to continue with your license or certification? Do you have to continue to add more time year after year after year, or just do them because you're interested?
Yeah, most places you have to renew it. But I think sometimes at some point you get out in the community and then you sort of get known, and then you just can. I think some of the better information comes from when really qualified people come in and do seminars. And there are a lot of good people out there. Karen Pryor puts on a lot of good seminars and
national
yeah,
person,
and she has certifications, but it's just one.
I had another question. So, is it better to put my puppy into a personal one-on-one training, or is group training, group classes, is that adequate for a young dog versus an adult dog?
Well, it's the same thing. It depends on who the teacher is. I think that if you can find a teacher who's really good, and in my opinion, you don't want to go with somebody who is really into aversive training. That's really things come into fashion with training, and they go out of fashion. But I think very aversive training is not only not in fashion. I don't think it's ever going to come back in fashion.
How do you define that?
If somebody is doing a lot of punishment with the dog, boy, I'm going to start to get into what terms means, but I mean aversive punishment. So punishment just is anything that would stop or reduce a behavior. So it might be going no.
Some kind of reprimand.
But I'm saying when we're physically being rough with the dog, when they're trying, or cat, but this is usually dog training, when they're trying to learn, there is no need for it. There's all kinds of evidence that says that it's not helpful. But puppy class versus hands-on training, I think puppy class is probably adequate. Again, if you have a good teacher. But I really think if you live in an ideal world, you would do some private one-on-one training and then take that information and try to do it in a puppy class, or even an adult class. It doesn't matter, puppy or adult. Where it's the hardest for them to actually listen to perform is in the
all the
place,
other things.
Unbelievable distraction. So
Right,
to try to ask them to look at you and to sit.
But it's also a great place. I tell my clients and friends that if you go to one of these public group classes, then you get socialization of animal to animal, also animal to other humans. I think that can be useful.
Yeah, I know. I really like classes. I've taught many classes, and I love to teach class. I just think in a perfect world, you could get a little bit of both, so you can very specifically work on your issues with your dog, and people can fine-tune it a lot better.
That makes sense. How about in treats? Training treats versus clicker training, where they make the little noise. There's probably other methods to kind of keep attention, and isn't that the idea of those, to get an immediate, focused attention from the pet, or is it simply a reward-based thing? Or use one in front and one in back? Can you summarize that?
Can I summarize that? Well, it's very difficult to teach anything with a brain, anything, if they are not motivated. So using food is simply a really easy way to be able to motivate an animal. It doesn't have to be the only way, but if they're kind of hungry and they really love whatever it is, that little piece of hot dog, then they're likely, once they figure out that you're the person who's going to give them, at some point they're going to go, what do I need to do to get that? And I really want it. So that's why you use it. And it's also little treats. You can, when you are teaching, you're usually teaching something big, but you break it down to a tiny little element, and you reward a tiny little piece, and then you build those together. So you need to be able to reward really quickly, and a tiny piece of food works well, and it builds a nice relationship because the dog is thinking, ooh.
Well, that's another good point. So the reward has to happen quickly, but so does the reprimand or whatever it is, whether it's just verbal or vocal. You have to associate that response with whatever the pet did wrong. Is that correct?
Well, there are camps out here about what people think is appropriate. So it depends upon your style of training, and there are some people that they simply do not reprimand. I'm doing air quotes here. They will extinguish behavior by ignoring it, or they just will not reward it. if you have a motivated dog who's saying, what do I need to do to get that treat? Eventually going to figure out that the only thing that will get them the treat is the thing that you're looking for. So they tend to be compliant and happy. But if you are going to say I think probably there's a lot of people that are really okay with going or no. You have to make sure that you're saying it, you're at the moment that they're doing the thing that you don't want. And that really leads into another conversation of you have to know exactly what you're trying to teach before you start.
That's a good point. I always ask people, trainers that like to find their opinion about training collars, like pinch collars versus gentle leaders versus, I've seen some harness kind of related products, and you were mentioning you've even seen some other devices. But how critical are those to be as part of the basic training, or is that something that comes later with more advanced training?
Okay, so no, it doesn't come with advanced training. It comes when maybe you have a very difficult dog or you really don't have the skills to train them. So you're trying to do something to physically just manage them because you don't know how to manage it with another skill set that you would have. So with a puppy, it's not necessary at all, except I'd have a collar and a leash, but just to keep them from leaving.
Get their attention.
No, really just to keep them from leaving.
Okay.
Because you can get their attention in many other ways. So there really is absolutely on a puppy no reason to use anything other than a buckle collar or a leash. And some other devices only because the dogs have maybe they're so tiny and so delicate that their tracheas get
right.
And I now, having said that, and I'm not necessarily advocating it, but I have seen big, tough dogs with pinch collars on them, and no harm is done.
Right.
But it. Again,
I've seen those same big dogs respond to a gentle leader collar as though they had a pinch collar on. And for people that don't know what a pinch collar is, it's kind of an interlacing chain that has points that kind of, when you tighten it and pull on it, it tightens on the neck and puts point pressure. And if it's managed correctly, as you're saying, a lot of animals do really well and they don't get hurt. But if it's mismanaged, it can be a real problem. That's why I kind of like the gentle leader, where it's kind of using other mechanics to try and control a big animal.
And the thing is, this is only a way to kind of hang on to your dog. So you really need to learn what are all these little teaching techniques that you can do so your dog will walk with you, so you don't have to go through all that.
I wanted to ask you, how much of the training that we do or you do as a manager can be translated to the owner? And I imagine that some foundation training you're going to get placed in that dog's brain, and then some other aspects are things that have to be managed again and again. So the owner has to take responsibility and continue some of the practice. Is that right?
Are you saying, like, if I train your dog, I can just give you the dog and he'll just do what I say?
Well, I'm just thinking that, I'm wondering if parts of the training program are going to be instilled pretty easily into the dog, and then you take the dog home with other aspects of your training that have to be, revisited until they get it.
Okay, well, there's kind of two parts to this question. One is, and when I work with somebody, I always put my hands on the dog, and I usually always teach them sit and down, and I let the owners watch me, and I get the dog kind of doing it, and then I hand it off to the owner, and then I coach them through that.
To do the same thing
yes.
You just did.
So if I didn't, if I just had your dog on my own, which I would not enjoy that whatsoever, like boarding training, I don't like, but not because it's bad, I just don't enjoy it. But the dog would do it just much more easily. But they really are sensitive to people, and they figure out whether whether you really want them to do it, or whether you're going to get distracted after you ask them and not follow through. So it's about learning how to do it and following through. And then there's something called proofing a dog. So they don't really probably generalize that well, and I have a very unscientific rule that says if they train in 5 different environments, let's say whatever it is, sit, the down, the high five, whatever you're teaching them, 5 very different environments, and then likely they'll start to do it in whatever environment. And
so
they're,
you do it like in a sequence, so they get used to the sequencing of one trick to another? So
no, definitely not.
you want it more random.
I don't want to do that, because then what they do is they're not really listening to you. They're just sort of, what they say, cueing off the previous trick, and then they're not really doing what you're asking them.
That's very good. I have one last question for you. So is you do a standard training program if you're learning to be a trainer, and then is it natural to go on to like abnormal behavioral training, or are those two separate sciences? So I think of things like an inappropriate urination in a cat, or some minor aggression, or an animal that is now protecting its food bowl.
It's like going to college. Let's say it's not nearly as big as going to college at first, and you touch on things, so you learn a little bit about things, and just problem behaviors and how to stop unwanted behavior, and then how to teach basic obedience or manners, and then you have the little novice version of all those things. And then if you want to learn more, there are higher certifications in some programs, or the other part is you learn it because you're in the company of people who do this all the time and they really know it, and you read lots of books and you go to seminars, and it's like continuing education.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm just amazed at how intelligent you are, especially regarding this particular topic. You were amazing.
I love it. I do love it. But I'll tell you what, there's some pretty amazing trainers in this town.
Oh, St. Louis is definitely a pet town. I mean, I think San Francisco's a big one, but St. Louis is right up there with all aspects of services for pets and programs and rescue. I'm always impressed.
I think there's people who know a great deal more than I do, but I think my specialty is teaching the pet owners.
That's important.
Yeah, that's really, I think, that is my claim to fame, of how to teach you how to teach your dog.
Well, we didn't get a chance to talk about cat training, which is probably much more limited in some ways.
I let my cat do whatever he wants, too. That's the other thing.
That's not a good answer.
I know. He doesn't do anything bad. He doesn't.
I just wanted to thank you, Cindy, for all the great information. And I'll have a number for you in next segment, and you can call her if you need some training support. And I appreciate what we got through. I think we had some good discussion.
Yeah, and we kind of entertained each other.
Yeah. So this is Dr. Doug Pernikoff of All Things Animal Radio Show, and we will be back for our final segment in just a moment.
And Scooby-Doo, if you come through, you're gonna have yourself a Scooby snack. Scooby-Dooby-Doo, here are you.
Yogi Bear is smarter than the average bear. Yogi Bear is always in the ranger's hair.
Well, welcome back, lovely visitors and listeners. This is our final segment of today's show, and I want to begin by thanking Cindy for all her great work, and especially regarding the training section. She gave us a ton of good information. And as regards travel, we picked up a number of big points, but the biggest point, I think, is that you need to do your homework ahead of time and find out what the terms of your travel agenda will be, whether it's by plane or by car. There are a lot of things we talked about that you need to do, and if you get confused, talk to your veterinarian, or certainly look it up on Google, and you can learn quite a bit. And then as far as training goes, again, we talked many, many, many interesting points, and I don't know if there's one. I think, again, and if you want to be a trainer, shop the programs. Make sure you understand, interview them as much as they're going to interview you. And then, as Cindy has said, I think, do you have any final step? I was going to just say that you really need to know what you're trying to accomplish when you approach a training issue. Does that sound fair? That's a good answer.
I would just say it doesn't mean it's not that easy to make a living. So if you're doing it thinking I'm just going to go and I'm going to start doing training and make a living, that's a false. It's a little challenging. I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but you really need to build a reputation, and it takes a little bit of time. That's
true. That's good news. And then finally, we want to visit with some events that are coming up. Do you have anything interesting for us?
Well, in my opinion, this is really interesting. And I think I have a suggestion that you might want to go to this one that's on the 19th at the AKC Museum of the Dog, because you're really thinking about working on getting fit, and you're sort of all about being healthier, right?
That's right.
And you have dogs, right?
Absolutely.
So on Sunday, March 19th, oh, for Pete's sake, I don't have the time. I have a phone number, though. Let me give you the phone number for the Museum of the Dog before I even tell you what this is. It's 314-669-5595, 669-5595. It costs $20. It's called Get Fit with Fido.
That's
And
interesting.
their little tagline is sweat and bonding. So they're doing aerobics, strength training, core strength, and balance with your dog.
Oh, that's a neat topic.
You could just one dog, though, I think you should take. I mean,
If you guys want to visit with Cindy and get some information on training,
I got a better thing, even better thing that's happening.
Oh, you got it. I'm sorry, I
Oh,
butted
no,
in.
I'm sorry, not better. I have another thing that's happening, but
okay. Is
I'm
this
going.
like alternative facts?
No.
Okay.
No, but there's something called Mondio Ring, and it is a competition with dogs, and it's sort of a Schutzhund and more. And the whole idea is that many different kinds of breeds can participate. It's always been dominated
By the big dogs.
No, by oh my God,
Bully breeds?
No.
What?
A dog that I really know. It looks like a German Shepherd, a Malinois. It's
Malinois.
always been dominated by Malinois because they're just amazing athletes. Anyway, this is out at Purina Farms out in Gray Summit. It's 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Saturday, March 18th and the 19th, and it should be extraordinary.
That sounds neat. I'd like to see
I'll be
that.
there on the 19th. Come find me.
Great. And I want to let you know, as I started to before I was so rudely interrupted, that Cindy is available for training support. You can call her at our clinic at 636-530-1808, the Clarkson Wilson Veterinary Clinic, or you can look at our website at www.clarksonwilsonvet.com. And this is Dr. Doug Pernikoff and Cindy Vickers signing off from
Signing
Dr.
off.
Doug's All Things Animal Radio Show. Thanks for listening. Next week, we're going to talk about unusual pets in your home.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Every fair, he will sleep till noon, but before it's dark, you'll have every picnic basket that's in Jellystone Park.